Welcome to Operation Mission Possible. My name is Joseph VanFonda. I'm a retired Marine Sergeant Major. I am the CEO for the Disabled Veterans National Foundation and author in terms of resiliency. I'm here today with Forged Valor. We have Colonel Mayor John, retired Marine. We have Mo Smith, and they're partners in this mission. And we're just going to have a tabletop, conversation about what the mission is and what you bring to the table. And I'm excited to be here with both you two gentlemen. So we're going to start off with Colonel Mayor John. John Mayer, tell me about who you are, what you do.
Oh, thanks, Sergeant Major Joe VanFonda. We served together at the Wounded Warrior Regiment, and quite honestly, all this got started with Joe and Mo back in 2011. Sergeant Major and I were the command team at the Wounded Warrior Regiment, and we decided we had catastrophically wounded Marines sitting in Walter Reed Hospital, and that was at the height of the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. And you get a Marine that's missing his arms and his legs, and has got a traumatic brain injury or just severe PTSD. He's got to have a will to live. The doctors can do their medical stuff and they do amazing things saving lives, but you got to have the spirit to want to live when you're in a catastrophically wounded condition. And so we knew that the best thing for the inside of a man is the outside of a horse. So we wanted to get these wounded Marines horseback. And so we put out a call for cutters, and Mo Smith showed up with 4 horses, and we did what we called the Wounded Warrior Regiment Cutting Horse Classic. And we did that in spring of 2011, and Mo showed up with his cutting horses, and we did this marvelous kind of 4 days of training, then a day of competition. And all 3 of us, saw the amazing changes it did, showing these folks, these Marines, that, hey, there's still, despite your disabilities, you still have much abilities. And then we did another one, and Mo came back, and then we decided to take him out to Casper, Wyoming, to a big ranch to put practical application, the skills they learned in the arena, onto a working ranch. And Mo brought horses, and we took a bunch of veterans out to Casper and did an incredible job gathering cattle, and then we branded them. It was a pretty neat deal, but that was the start of what would later become Forged Valor. And yes, I am Colonel John Mayer, retired now, and I am the co-founder of our nonprofit, Forged Valor.
Awesome. Good seeing you again, Colonel. And Mo, just to let you know, when I checked in as a Sergeant Major to the Colonel, he asked me if I was a cowboy. I go, no, sir. He goes, well, you're going to be a cowboy by the time I'm done with you. So that's how it all started. I got my first pair of boots with the Colonel. He picked them out for me. He says, I needed these, help me pick out this hat. Also, I think I'm not sure where it was. I think it was in Georgia somewhere, where I bought the black hat. You had me get the black hat and so forth. So that's where we teamed up, and he led, I followed. I enjoyed learning to be a cowboy, and I enjoyed working with wounded, ill, and determined veterans. Looking to fill that gap into resiliency and so forth. So it's just been an honor and pleasure being a Colonel, Sergeant Major, and so forth. So I know I've met you a couple times here, Mo, and just to let you know, I won the championship trophy on one of those cutting contests. Just to let you know. So I was very proud of that. So let's hear about Mo. Okay, we got Mo. He's your co-founder of Forged Fire. Let's hear a little about Mo. And Mo, how did you meet the Colonel again? Of course, and what brought you to form this wonderful organization with the good Colonel?
Well, like I said, we met in June of 2011, and we were just teamed up and they gave me about, I think, 36 hours notice to get some horses ready and get up there. So it was a hurry up and motivate. So, and I did, and I hauled horses up, and we had a great time. I hauled very powerful horses up. So they were a little hard to ride for people that didn't know how to ride that good. And we quickly changed it up to more using type horses so that people weren't being slung around like rag dolls on top of a horse. Because if anybody knows anything about cutting horses, they're can be pretty hard to ride and hard to stay on. But John and I, we started and we built this relationship there, and of course, I was extremely rough around the edges myself, just kind of like the veterans we had. They were rough, and so we just kind of molded together pretty good. And through the years, I've learned that maybe I could learn more because people were confiding in me and I was helping people in counseling, and I didn't think I had the right to be counseling a goat, much less another human being. So I started learning. I took psychology classes, counseling classes, got a few certificates and degrees, and it opened my eyes up to understand why people do what they do. And I become more effective in getting to the root of problems. I'm still, most people would say, exceptionally rough, but I like to believe I'm very effective. We don't my desire is not to, and I think Forged Valor desire is not to go out and have a good time, not to go out and just learn to ride horses and do really amazing stuff. The desire is that people possess real knowledge when they leave, and real knowledge about themselves, real knowledge about their family, real knowledge. I had a knife clinic here probably back in 2013 maybe, where we had 10 guys come out and they made knives. And one of the attendees, about midnight, we were having this deep discussion, and he looked at me and he goes, "Why do you care so much?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Why do you do this? Why do you let people into your house that you don't know? And why do you care so much about us?" And I said, "Well, I don't, I hate to say this, but it's not that I care any more about you than I do anybody else." Um, I said, "I care about your wife or your future wife, your kids or future kids, your boss or employees, your neighbors, everybody you have contact with. But right now, you're the only person I have that has access to them. So I'm going to give you everything I got." And that's the way I look at everybody. I look at everybody that way. I look at it that I've been commissioned to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ. Look, I've been commissioned to help as many people with their internal battles, because most of the time, most of us, speed bumps stop us, and a little speed bump will come along and we're crippled when there's mountains to climb, and that's where we have the great victories on top of those mountains. And that's where we see that those speed bumps are just little things that cripple us, and we need to move on past them. We don't need to let them just destroy us in life. So that's our goal. That's my goal. That's what we do. And we use these big events in Wyoming, Montana, Texas, and everywhere we travel. And we also teach various trades. And I've just grown and grown and grown. These guys that I've worked with for the last 15, 16 years, I need them just as much as they may need us, because neither one of us, I can speak for myself, I would not be who I am today without access to them.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, let me ask you this. Do Marines make good cowboys?
No, 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 no. So, yeah. And first of all, I'm not a cowboy. I just pretend to be one. And
Well, I
and
mean, I've been to many ranches before that actually provide services for veterans, right,
Mhm.
throughout the years. After my, stint of the headquarters Marine Corps working for the colonel. I remember been to one ranch and they wanted me to put a helmet on. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. I said, I'll put a cowboy hat on, but I'm not putting a helmet on. I steer away. I kind of stay away from, I know that, it's a liability thing probably. I'm not sure, but to me, I don't think a Marine would want to jump on a horse with a helmet on. That's
Well,
not.
it's kind of like an oxymoron. I mean, you can go out, you can get shot at, you can shoot things, you can blow things up, But if you're going to ride this horse, we need to make sure we protect your noggin.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's kind of men were created to do hard things.
Absolutely. Be challenged.
Yeah, be challenged a little bit, and that's what we do. We push people to limits and hope they never find them. And
Yeah.
and I'm we like that. I mean, our stuff is not super easy.
Absolutely. That's hard work. It's good work too, because I believe, and and that's the mindset behind the colonel I can speak for, because his main soundbite is keeping our wounded away from complacency. Isn't that
Yeah,
right, Colonel?
missions.
Something like that.
Complacency kills. Complacency kills. You once told a story, Colonel John, and I'm going to move over to Colonel Mayer right now, about why do you hug our wounded? Why do you hug our wounded, ill, and injured? Can you bring me back to that story?
I still hug them, and Mo doesn't like to hug, so I'm always hugging, and Mo's always like, I don't do that. But, when I lost my first Marine, and it was in right outside of the Baghdad, we had just crossed the river, the Delilah River leads into the eastern portion of Baghdad. We attacked into Sadr City. And my first Marine took a shot through the neck from a mosque, and he literally died right next to me. And I watched the life drain out of his eyes, and it was too late then to tell him how much his nation loved him, how much his brothers loved him, how much his team loved him, and how much I loved him for being a Marine and doing what he did. And I swore I wouldn't let that happen again. And so you can shake hands, you can say thank you, but man, a hug means something these days. Maybe it's because we've lost the ability to hug people. But I started hugging Marines, and I wanted them to know how much I appreciate it and I love them for doing what they do. And so I don't want anybody to go through life and not be appreciative for, or I at least don't want to tell or be the one that doesn't let them know how much I appreciate them. And I think a hug's the way to do it. And so I like hugging Marines, yeah, and others.
Nothing wrong with that. And then, I got my hug, a couple of them, and I really appreciate that, because at times I needed that hug as well.
Well, let me just tell you this, Sergeant Major, you'll appreciate this. So later on, when I was a MU commander, remember, I hug people as a way of saying how much I appreciate their good work. And usually units would pick one man to get hugged when I talked to the unit once a week, And so there'd be thousands that didn't get a hug. And so when I was a MU commander, Marine Expeditionary Unit, out in 3 ships, we'd pull into a Liberty port. And as soon as they get a few beers in them, I'm telling you, the Marines would start hunting me down to get a hug. And I'd hug hundreds of Marines in a night when they should have been drinking beer and doing good things. They were looking for a hug, which tells you how much people need that bit of affection. And so, anyways, that's why I hugged.
Well, hugging to me and your leadership style wasn't a form of weakness, it was a form of strength.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. And I appreciate, both you being on this podcast. I used to have a program in DVNF called Capacity Building Grant Programs, Mo. And it was a paper mill. They do their applications online. We spend hundreds of hours reviewing their letter of instruction, their thesis, how much they're asking for this and that, and then we have a board voting and all this, and award. It was a process, and there was just a lot of man hours. I said to myself, we're going to create a podcast. It's going to be called the OMP Podcast, Operation Mission Possible, where we believe, and I believe this truly, that all life challenges can be managed, where I can bring on like-minded nonprofit organizations that are serving veterans, right, our wounded, ill, and injured, the best that we've had, whatever that mission may be, but the mindset is serving veterans together. I want to bring them on a podcast. I want to hear their story. I want the listeners and the viewers to see the heart and desire of the leadership, and try to understand, the need that's happening out there, and why these organizations exist. And that's how I created Operation Mission Possible. When you're just one of many that I'm bringing on, I want to continue to hear your story, but I want to tell you this. All right, as we go, I'm going to get excited. I'm already excited to have you here, but I want to learn a little bit more about what you have to offer. What do you do? What programs do you offer? And what do you try to pull out of these veterans? And any of you, both of you, Mo, you can chime in. Colonel, I just want to know where's this coming from?
Oh, you want to go?
Oh, sure. So the the goal is, well, so I don't believe in mass evangelism. I don't believe in where you get 1,000 people or 100 people or whatever, and you try to influence the masses. I'm a personal believer in one, two small groups at a time, intimate settings. And our goal is to be impactful enough to where you recreate this, the attendee, the veteran, can take something that he got out of you and apply it to their life. Hopefully, not get the bad stuff that I may do, but get the good stuff and start building blocks so that their life it makes a little more sense to them, because we're not as different as we think we are. The same things that bother Joe bother Mike, and they might have different names or different scenarios, but it's still the same crippling stuff that will get us down. Our overwhelming thought patterns. We think we're frauds. Men go through these battles. We have a hard time communicating, on and on and on and on. So the with these tasks we do, with learning something, with building something with your hands. So we started back, I think, in 2016 or 17. We started back with crafting. We would ride horses all day long, move cattle, and then we'd come back and do a craft at night. And our crafts back then, and they mostly still are leather crafting. We built chaps on that very first one, which is a little massive undertaking. That was a little much for an evening class. We were 1 o'clock in the morning doing chaps, but we still did leather, and then we incorporated into home construction, blacksmith. Like we just had a blacksmith clinic last month where we made frying pans, and the guys forged out kitchen utensil knives, spatulas, belt buckles, pocket hand knife, side knives. I mean, they made a lot of cool stuff, and people can look at that on our Forged Valor Facebook page. There's a bunch of pictures of the stuff we made. But these things, people realize that no matter what's wrong with me or no matter what I'm dealing with, I'm still capable of so much more. So, like I said in our introductory, that's our goal. Our goal is to get people, let's say they can't go out into the workforce and they can't handle all the people or just the drive. I mean, me, myself, I live out in the boondocks, and I don't particularly like to drive into cities at all either. I don't go to the grocery stores. I don't go into malls. I don't do any of that stuff because it's just not a good place for me. And so that a lot of these people, I want to stay in a more isolated area to keep them from becoming a recluse. We want them to communicate with their people in their neighborhood, their families, and be the real leaders or the real parent and that they were intended to be. And that's my goal in a nutshell. Hopefully we've explained it. You got any questions about it? You want?
Well, I mean, I'm looking a little bit deeper on that there, brother man.
Well,
So here you are, here you are a cowboy, right? And you're providing these services, and you're using your own horses, your own trailer, your own gas, and diesel's expensive. You're doing all this sacrificing outside of your normal life. Something along the way, as a young man, snapped where you just wanted to be a giver in life. So why don't you talk to me about what happened there, Mo, on when that switch went off
Well,
and you, yeah, exactly.
we got to keep that family friendly. I'll just kind of give you a short synopsis about it. In 1995, I kind of broke down, and I wrote a story about it, and the title of the story was "Are You Believing a Lie?" And I didn't publish it. I gave it to all the veterans. I wrote it in 2016. It took me a year before I sent it out because it was very personal about my life.
Mhm.
And but my daddy would always tell me when I was a young kid, 8 years old, 9 years old, up to older, he says, "Son, you're never going to live till you're 19 years old." Well, because I was in the hospital a bunch and I was always doing things I shouldn't be doing, breaking bones, head-on collision with a Cadillac on a bicycle. I mean, you name it. I tried it and I did it, and I costed them a pile of money being in the hospital. And I was just a very rambunctious type child. And I'm 56 years old, and unfortunately, I'm still kind of rambunctious. I lived, but I believed that I wouldn't be alive till I was 19. I heard it so much. So you can imagine what my life looked like as I got a little older and got in my 20s. And then I felt like I was living on borrowed time. Well, somewhere around 1995, a man that was not scared of anything, nothing, nothing scared me. My dog just climbed out my window in the room here. The nothing scared me at all. And then at one moment there, I'm talking, it just happened in seconds that I believe that I was, I become scared of everything. And and it wasn't that I was scared someone was going to hurt me. I was just scared of living with everything that I done. I was scared of living with the life that I did. And that scared me more than anything. And so I said, Mo, you have spent half your life being selfish, half your life taken, and you need to spend the next half of your life giving. And and of course, then I got married, and she had 3 kids already. We had another one, and I was still pretty horrible human being. And my goal was to be a better man than my father, and I was making my dad look pretty good. And it's not that my dad's a horrible person; he just didn't really know any better or have much upbringing too.
Mhm.
And so with that, my family was gone at the 4th of July, and I told them that, and I stayed home because I hated her family. I hated everybody's family. I didn't want to go anywhere. I just stayed at my house. And, we run into a lot of veterans that are just like that.
Mhm.
They're just
Absolutely.
like that. So that's why I wrote that whole story, Are You Believing a Lie? It taps into all that. And then, of course, I didn't sleep the weekend they were gone. I was miserable. And I just said, Lord, I'm really screwing up. I am training these kids, even though I don't have much to do with them. I'm training them just to be a big puke like I am. I'm providing very well for them financially, but not emotionally, not leadership, not humility, not any of those things. So when they come back a day later or 2 days later, I met them outside and I apologized to the whole entire kids and everybody. And I said, from this day forward, I'm going to start teaching. This day forward, my goal is to make you better men than me. You're already there, but I'm going to climb the ladder and I'm going to drag you up with me. And when they went to college after that, that become so much part of my life that I just kept doing it, kept doing it, and kept doing it, and kept doing it. And I just, and I'm kind of annoying with it. I annoy myself. I'm sure I annoy people that are around me, but time is precious.
Absolutely.
You just don't know how long you're going to have involved with somebody.
Absolutely. And
So,
your life is like a cell, a nucleus. The nucleus is that center mass of a target, the center mass of a cell. And sometimes you got to take a step outside that nucleus and really take a look at what's going on the inside. And I think
Yeah.
that's what finally happened with you. You know, you took a step out and said, wait a minute now. You know, I
Yeah.
know I'm always comparing myself with my dad. And maybe you're wrong by doing that because you're falsely challenging yourself because you can never put yourself in your dad's boots because he was walking the path and he had all these negative attributes that maybe you weren't aware of.
No,
But
no.
but as a son, you know, you're comparing yourself, and I think that's normal. I grew up with no dad, you know, and like you, I've written a book as well. My book is called Before I Had a Name. It's out on Amazon. I'm not promoting or anything like that. You know, it's Before I Had a Name, and it tells a story about me, you know, about my road, and my road was abrasive, and I had to find my own strength through that. And I think that's what you've done right there. And I really, really appreciate that you share that part of your life with me and our viewers because you have the right heart and desire. And I can tell that you and the Colonel are great partners. And because he has a wonderful heart and desire as well. And I think your Forged Valor logo, your mission statement. I've been reading up what you folks are doing and so forth. I know a little bit about you. I rode some horses with you and all that. I know a little bit about the Colonel as well. I've served and stomped some dirt with him as well. But I want to have my opportunity. Hopefully, I can get back on the horse with you two. One of your ranches somewhere, so please invite me out. But also, Mo, I was hoping that you can probably email me and send me that story. I want to read that story. I think I'd like to read that story if you don't mind sharing it with me.
I'm sure I can find it. I haven't seen it in years.
Yeah, we got time, but yes, I would love to hear a little bit more about that
So when he
story.
says find it, Joe, it's probably on a piece of scratch paper.
Yeah,
He has it.
probably on the
He
back,
has it in a pile of other pieces of scratch paper.
probably
Yeah,
on the back of
I'm a
the note
meticulous.
card.
I'm a meticulous note keeper.
Hey, Colonel Mayor, let me ask you this: what was your high? What was your low as a Marine commander? And what was your high as a Marine commander? Can you share that with me?
As a Marine commander, huh?
Yeah.
Well, your low is going to be losing a man. I mean, every single time. And unfortunately, I carried 13 dog tags. Of the 13 I lost, and the countless other wounded. The high though, man, there's so many of them, and I think it's always in the eyes of your Marines when they accomplish something, and they, whether it's taking an objective. I fought in the Battle of Najaf, and there's points there where you're in a a life threatening situation, and it's so intense for 3 days, and then it's over, and it's like, wow,
Absolutely.
I'm still here, I'm still alive, and you look at your brother next to you and your left and your right, and they're still there, and it's amazing, and that's why all combat veterans, you hate combat and you love combat. It's one of those just kind of a crazy deal that just um, it's hard to explain to those who haven't been there, you know. But the important thing, though, really is from being a Marine and knowing how veterans think. All of us need a purpose. We need a purpose that's kind of noble, not just make money. How many people can just make money and call it a job, but hate what they do and hate their lives? So you need a meaningful purpose. And we all like to bring and have self-esteem. I bring something to the table, right? In other words, you got to have a skill set that you can bring to the team and be of value to others, right? So have a purpose, have your own skill set that you bring to the team, and then be part of a team that accomplishes a noble mission. So, when we were together at Wounded Warrior Regiment, we came up with this whole horseback riding thing. So the key is, why is Forged Valor important, and why is it different than so many other nonprofits? In order to ride with us, you've got to have some dedication, and you need to bring your skill sets to the table, which means you need to learn to ride to a basic level. Yeah. So you can ride safely and all that. And we offer that for free at Mo's Ranch and at my ranch here in Texas to get your basic skills up. And then we have our capstone events, which take them out to big ranches out west. This year we've got 4. Matter of fact, Mo and I will be taking 6 veterans to brand a family's cattle for them, their calves, in Wyoming in May. And then we'll be in Oregon in August and Montana in September and perhaps Nevada in October, all bringing and helping out the ranch. So the beauty is our veterans, they achieve a skill set as an individual. They bring their skills to the team of Forged Valor, which consists of other veterans and young adults. We have some young adults that ride with us. And then together we do a mission that helps a family ranch, and as a veteran, people say, thank you for your service to me all the time. How many thank these ranchers out there? I'm telling you, it is a ball-busting to be a rancher, a cattle rancher, do it from horseback in the traditional way. It is a tough duty to bring meat to the table. And the thing is, the ranchers don't even get the profits. It's really the dang middlemen and all that. And so thank a rancher, hug him for the hamburger you just ate last night, because by golly, they work as hard as veterans. And that's what we love about it. It's the closest thing to replicating combat, all those emotions and all those different tasks that Mo and I could find to give these veterans the sense of belonging to a brotherhood. Yeah, that's the beauty.
Absolutely. Colonel, what I found out through my time as a Marine for a lifetime and, as a CEO for DVNF, and I've been out there and, working programs and funding many hundreds of nonprofit organizations, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and doing site visits, is that when I'm looking at these disabled and at-risk veterans, and I mean that broadly, when you're disabled and at risk is because we're broken somewhere, in the 206 bones that we have in our body, there's something that's broken, and I believe that bringing your game to the game, your best, will help you identify where that break is, or and I think that's what nonprofits, good like-minded nonprofits, are actually doing, looking for where that break is, because you want to build upon that break to mend it where they have good resiliency. We're lacking resiliency in our young adults, young teenagers, and young children these days. They're not problem solving. They're not working through things, and I'm seeing it. I've seen it when I was a Marine drill instructor 1,000 years ago. I seen it when I was a regimental sergeant major up there working for you there, Colonel. We would travel, 3 weeks out of a month, hitting all the Veterans Integrated Service Network hospitals. We'd go in, I'd read Corporal so-and-so, and you'd go in, you talk to them, and we knew through the record jacket if that was a good Marine or a bad Marine in terms of administrative wise, right? But when you got into that hospital room, 99% of those wounded warriors, I remember wanting to go back to the fight. Hey, Colonel, give me my legs. I want to be back with my boys, Yeah. You got Joey Jones on Fox News, who was under you, Colonel Mayer, at Walter Reed Bethesda. He's working on Fox News, doing real well for you. He's a strong man that lives resiliency and teaches and pushes resiliency. And I admire, listen to him and his story as well. And I know you brought that out because you created those programs where you gave individuals opportunities. What I did not like to hear was this is your new normal. I hated to hear that, because if it becomes your new normal, all right, it doesn't define you, but it restricts you. All right, it restricts you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I never liked it, and I don't think the Wounded Warriors like that term as well. This is your new normal. I just don't like it. Because although they may have some inabilities because of their injuries, there are abilities out there. And I think that's what Forged Valor does. You bring out those abilities, through workmanship and teamwork and so forth, And I admire that. I really admire it. When I first met Mo, and this is just my observation, Mo, I was wondering who the heck is this cat? You weren't you were to me when I met you, my observation was he's a man, he's a cowboy, he's got a good heart, and he's firm and he's fair. That's what I looked at. I didn't see nothing negative. I seen heart and desire. I've seen the way you interacted. You weren't coddling the wounded warriors, putting them on horses. You were challenging them, and I appreciate that. And honestly, when I wanted to get a hold of the Colonel again, and I seen you as the co-founder of Forge and Valor, I mean, I was like, this is awesome. What a team, So I think it's a great pair. That how you guys paired and came together and all that. I love your mission statement on your website. I love what you guys are all about. You bring heart and desire and personalism to your organization. So it's not a product processing approach as a nonprofit. You're bringing that personal touch of caring and taking care of our wounded, ill, and injured. And when I say wounded, ill, and injured, it's the visible wounds, it's the invisible, it's the visible and invisible wounds. And we all know that PTSD is real. And I know we're dealing a lot with the invisible wounds. I think that's the flavor, sadly. And the world is not kind, so you gotta give as much, and you gotta pinpoint where that giving is needed. And I like the approach that you two gentlemen are doing with your nonprofit. Really, really do, Mo.
Well, thank you. Well, John is probably 3/4 of it. He is the machine. I've referred to myself as the action figure, and he's the administrative. So
I heard that you two are like two old married couples that are fighting all the time.
oh, we do. You know what? I think we're past a lot of arguing. We don't argue as much as we used to. I think I've surrendered, and but we we've had people talk about us getting a divorce on multiple occasions. But no, we do argue. We are like hot and cold water, but that's what makes us a great team. And thank God for John, because he is such an administrative blessing where he does all this logistics and everything. And I'm just here to kind of fill in the gaps and execute. And I talk to a lot of people. I have my strengths for sure, but we would not exist without John's efforts or putting all these things together. And that is 100% certain. And 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 I think both of us have a heart for humans. It is for veterans, and we have primarily 99% work with veterans. However, we've both of us have just seen where we take a veteran to these Casper or Wyoming or wherever. I saw it years ago. We put them on this celestial mountain. They do all these great things, close to combat, exciting, little danger, little this, little that, the camaraderie of their brothers once again for 5 days. Then we put them on a plane and send them back home. So basically kick them off the mountain, and they go home to their families. And I can only imagine the conversation. The husband or the wife, whoever was with us, comes home and they say, man, it was exciting. We did this, we did this, we did this. I had such a great time. And the family probably looks at them and maybe says to themselves, like, why can't he have a good time with us? Why is he so high on life there, but now he's back here? And we kick them back off without maybe proper tools to be able to build that team in their house, to be able, like a lot of this leather crafting stuff, we started something years ago where they could do it with their kids in their house. And now we try to incorporate. We've had families here on my ranch and John's ranch to where we have the veteran, their wife, and the children, and we teach them to ride horses, and they move cattle around on the ranch, and it's a big thing. So now the father and the mother are now the authority figures of teaching, because in my view, anybody that chooses to engage life is a warrior in my book. because the battlefield of life is tough duty. And most people would tell you they'd rather be back in overseas or in combat because the day-to-day battling with your wife or your spouse or your
The
kids.
adrenaline high's not there, Mo. The
Yeah, you're
adrenaline
losing
high's
it.
not there arguing with your wife. So that's the reason why he's arguing with his wife. The adrenaline's not there with the job that he has because it doesn't meet the expectations of the job he has as a Marine.
Yeah.
He's not in combat. He's not on alert. His peripheral vision is still so wide, and his depth of that resiliency
But
is just so long.
yeah, but the
So he's
battle is
fighting for
very
that,
worth.
right? So
Yeah, but the battle.
when you jump on a 2,000 pound horse, 1,500 pound horse, or whatever the case is, that adrenaline is going to shoot, because as you know, the horse isn't going to move. The horse isn't going to dance with you unless you respect the horse and the horse respects you. It's a relationship that you have to build, So I
It's,
know you
it's, it's relinquishing
absolutely,
trust. It's relinquishing trust to the horse. But all that to be said is that this battle of life is in need of a warrior. And,
absolutely,
and so yes, you were a great Marine, a great Green Beret, a great at all these things. But you can this battle of life, you can still fight it. It is tough duty every day in and day out. It never goes away. You don't get that 3 days of intense battle John was talking about, and then the next year is cozy because you're gonna get 3 days of battle, and then you may have one day off, and then there's gonna be something else pop up. But so it just in the horse thing with these guys that come out and ride these horses, I notice a lot of them don't like to relinquish authority to the horse, and that is the hardest thing for a human, especially a combat veteran, to sit on the back of a horse. And I say, if you want to get along with your pony, you got to trust them. You got to trust,
absolutely,
and you got to.
absolutely,
That means you can't micromanage or dictate everything. It's not a motorcycle. I said it's a living, breathing animal that you guys can merge together, and you can be a great team, or you can fight all day long, and both of you are miserable at the end of the day.
Mm.
And that in itself, it teaches them a lot of communication, a lot of how maybe I'm micromanaging my entire family. Maybe I'm doing all these things. I've got to relinquish control a little bit, and know that I not everything hinges on everything I do.
absolutely, absolutely, because they've been in such a structured environment,
Absolutely,
And
absolutely.
when you're stressed out, that's when that OCD starts creeping up on you.
Oh, I know a
Everything has
little about it.
absolutely, everything has to be in place. And then if everything's not in place, you're having a bad day. And if you're having a bad day, your loved ones that don't have everything in place to your mindset is having a bad day. But when you're riding a horse, when you're grooming a horse, when you're feeding a horse, when you're putting that saddle on the horse, when you're putting your foot, and you're jumping on that horse, and you're just trotting along, you know, all those attributes. It's like the characteristics of a 5.56 lightweight air-cooled gas-operated shoulder weapon firing semi-automatic by use of a selector lever, right? The characteristics of that rifle, you need to understand what the characteristics are of that horse, and that's what you teach, and that's what the colonel taught me for the first time. Those characteristics. He taught me how to saddle up a horse for the first time. He showed me what boots to wear. These aren't good boots there, Sergeant Major, the rubber soles, the rubber soles. No, you want these. These are heavier. You don't want that. By the way, this white hat right here, this is your working hat. And this black hat right here, this is your dress hat. This is where you're going to go out and you're going to show and tell all the knowledge you learn riding a horse. So and I loved it. I loved it because not only was I learning something, I was actually working on my demons as well. I'm a wounded combat, wounded warrior, Colonel knows, been there, done that kind of thing. And, we're all open to PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, right? I mean, there's something in our life that rubbed us the wrong way and we just can't shake it. That doesn't mean we're broken or it's bad. It means it's something that's sticking with us and we need to learn how to process that, right? Because if we dwell on that, because our mind isn't or isn't in a good job that's keeping me active, or my household I'm not being active, I isolate myself. That complacency brings me back to that injury, right? That injury, what it may be, that mental injury, that physical injury, right? And you get complacent. suicide, right, is more than what they're saying, right? And I believe that keeping the mind busy, bringing their A game, and you refining their A game, with your programs, I think that you're saving lives as well. What's your thought on that there, Mo? What's your thought on that, Colonel? On PTSD and how riding a horse keeps that individual from complacency and how it can help.
Well, when a person sits around, you think about a man that was in combat, or you can take somebody that just had a job, a very important job for a long time, and then the job was were no longer needed at that job, no longer needed in combat. And that goes back to that story I wrote, you believe in a lie. You've done enough. You don't need to do no more. Here's some pills. And so they go home, and a lot of guys will take their medication, too much of it, and maybe more of it, maybe drink a few beers with it. And they sit on a couch, and and people are telling them, the wife or the husband or whoever the spouse is, or the family members, the mother and father, are telling them they don't expect anything out of them. Well, what would you feel is if someone didn't expect anything out of you for years and years and years and years and years? And then eventually, after 2 or 3 years, a man's going to sit around and go, no one depends on me. No one asked me to do anything. No one believes in me. No one needs anything out of me. Why the hell am I here? I should have died with so-and-so. I should have done this. I mean, the battle, it's not everybody thinks exactly like this, but this is a process of eliminations. This is a process of thought that a lot of people deal with. When that purpose that John Mayer talks about so much, when you can establish that, now the purpose is engage in life. And so you said the resilience. I use the word fortitude a lot. People are terrified to start something because they are terrified of failure. They're terrified of just not being successful. And so they just never do it. They just never start. They don't get off that couch. They don't stop taking their pills. They don't get out and engage life. They're just terrified of something bad's going to happen, or it's not going to go the way I planned. So with the pushing and problem that we do through Forged Valor, and by showing them things and pushing them to another levels, then at the end of it, they're like, holy smokes, I did this. I did this. And that suicide is bad. I mean, there's no doubt about it. However, some people have clinical issues and all kinds of stuff. So I can't speak as a doctor or a psychologist on suicide itself. But what I've seen with a lot of guys, that very first event when we were staying over there at that pond house, a guy opened up to me, the very first event, and I saw the fact that we build this thing up, and they just keep talking about it and talking about it and talking about it, and you got to make a decision. So when you get these guys, and I've had this conversation multiple times, when you can say the decision to commit suicide, then you're gone. The decision to live, to leave a legacy, to people remember you for 100 years, your legacy lives on. Living's hard. There's no doubt about it. Living's tough duty, but the opportunity you have to mold. My daughter was a Marine, and she suffered deeply, and she still suffers. But she wrote a letter, and she said she's damaged, but not broken. Yeah, they'll never be the same person they were. And that's what I hear multiple times, and I'm sure you've heard it. I'm different now. I'm not going to be the same person. Well, of course, you're different. But you can take these things that have happened to you, apply it to your life now, and be stronger, and be there so much more. Every veteran that has come through the program, that embraced life, that's conquered some of these battles, have helped other veterans, have helped their family. I can name dozens and dozens and dozens of them, success stories, to where their family lives are better, their marriages are better, their kids are better. They understand their personal life is better, and then they have other veterans that they work with. That's the goal, not just to help this one, but to help to build them up in such a way that they can help all the ones they have contact with.
Absolutely.
that
Force multiple.
that
Yeah.
that it multiplies. And so yeah, I hope, I wish we could eradicate all suicide with kids, veterans, and just
I think that you know, I'm a little bit older than you, Mo. I'm about the same age, Colonel. Looking good, by the way, Colonel.
Thank you.
But we grew up differently, as you know, right? Um, our resiliency, problem solving skills, we fell down, we got up. Um, when we fell down again, we got back up. We challenged ourselves as young kids. One, one telephone in the house with a 30-foot extension cord with a party line on it, 3 TV channels, right? 13, 10, and 6. Watching Popeye before we go to school, being there at 9, getting out at 3. We spent our time outside doing, chores or playing until the street lights came on and came in. So we learned to work through some of those challenges as young individuals. Today, it's tough to see those young individuals get off the couch and away from their electronics and challenge themselves outdoors. But being a Marine drill instructor, I remember having a platoon size of 80. And I used to say to myself, well, I said to the recruits, if you're from New York, take a step forward. If you're from Chicago, take a step forward. Philadelphia, all the big cities, I told them to take a step forward. And I see all my country boys, and I was one, and I did that myself. And I put the city boys in the pit first. And I challenge them. Day one, put them in the pit. You know what that means there, Colonel. And we make sugar cookies and and be within the limits of what I can do as a Marine drill instructor. And then I take the country boys next. My swimmers were the country boys, my shooters were the country boys. So you can see the strengths and weaknesses by the city. And I'm not saying that the Marines today now, or service members today that grew up in cities, are not good service members. They're great service members, I'm sure, and they're phenomenal at what they do and so forth. But what I recognize training thousands of recruits, I've always noticed, that the country boys were better shooters, better swimmers, and better at PT. They're better at certain things than the city boys, and I looked at that and I learned from that as a drill instructor. Then when I get back out to the fleet, you don't see that. You don't see the country boy. You don't see the city boy. You don't see. To me, back then it was, if you're a light Marine or a dark Marine. We're all Marines. We didn't look at the shade of the Marine. We didn't really look at if you're fat, skinny, tall, or short. Once you graduated boot camp, you just part of the fabric of the Marine Corps, and you're a Marine, and that's it. But as someone that's making Marines, right, I can decipher and I can see the weakness and the strengths of what's coming from populace, right? And that's a lot of lack of resiliency and so forth. Now, as you folks are running your nonprofit and you're seeing veterans coming from all walks of life, different ages and so forth, they all have a different path. They all have different resiliency levels. You challenge them, right? You challenge them on teaching them to be a cowboy, or they came with the basics and you challenge them to raise the bar. Can you talk to me a little bit more about that, Colonel Mayer, and about what do you try to pull out of a veteran when you actually have them in your realm?
Yeah, I want to start by saying neither Mo or I, we don't claim to be cowboys. We know some real cowboys, some fine cowboys, and they are talented men, and we're not there. But what we do believe in is several things, and so going to large ranches and doing what the cowboys do day in and day out is the magic formula, in our opinion. And so you asked earlier, why do you use horses? How many nonprofits use horses? There's not very many of them. One, because you don't get the big numbers. A lot of donors and all that are looking for numbers. How many numbers can you get through? Well, you can do that with bicycles and I don't know, whitewater rafting, whatever. But with a horse, you only got so many horses. You only got so many good horses. But the beauty is, no matter where somebody comes from, a horse makes you, in order to get any good at it, you've got to first be at peace with yourself. You know, the cool thing about a horse is from 4 feet away, the horse can see right into your soul. It knows your spirit, whether you bring anxiety, fear, courage, joy, it knows you. And you've got to be able to uh, have a happy heart, as I say, which is, you know, common term on Marines. You need a happy heart. You need to be at peace with yourself, or it's going to be troublesome working with that horse because he can sense it. So you've got to be able to be at peace with yourself in order to start working to the horse. And then you need to gain the horse's trust. So you do that, you have to think like a horse. And we could spend hours talking about, but the key thing is you have to adjust in order to be good with a horse. You've got to adjust the way you think in order to work with a horse, train the horse, get the horse's trust. Very similar to how you have to be with your family and your kids and your spouse, you know. So people say, you know, I used to fight with the Marine Corps leadership. Why do you use horses? It's you know, low demand, high risk, and it's going to be an elite sport. Not these guys can't go out and buy horses. It isn't about that. It's about all the goodness that happens when you work with horses. And it doesn't have to be a lifetime thing. It can be 1 week with us will change everybody if you listen to what Mo and I say and adapt to the way you must be when you work with a horse to be successful. Yeah. And so the horses, in order to be any kind of value, as I said before, you've got to gain your basic skills. So you've got to adjust to the horse. And Mo's the master horseman. I've just learned from him over time. But I'm telling you, there's the key ingredient to all of this is adjusting the person to be able to lead a horse. And if you can lead a horse, by golly, you can probably lead your family. And that's one of the reasons we love doing what we do on a horse. And after they get their skills, and then it's doing a mission, your purpose, you know. So many people are told, hey, you've done enough. You're a combat wounded veteran. You've already given your service. Here's your disability income. Go home and you are done. And as we talked about, Mo went into a bunch of detail on, you've lost your self-esteem with no purpose. You know, I've got no value. I'm just collecting money. I'm just sitting at home. Where's my purpose? And so that's why we like giving them a purpose. You've got to become a rider. Now you're going to take your skills, add it to a team, and you're going to move 500 cattle 50 miles into the Wyoming mountains. And if you can do that, by golly, then you probably can pursue anything you're really interested back at home. That hobby or entrepreneurial opportunity, or go seek that job or return to school. You know, that's kind of the way we do it. We throw them into the forge of ranch work. But our goal really is to show them that, hey, you can now go and do whatever you set your mind to because you could accomplish what we have for you. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm just, you know, when I was introduced to horses by you, Colonel, given the opportunity to go to Casper, Wyoming, and the Wyo Ranch. Remember the Wyo Ranch?
I do.
I shot a boar there. I remember that. Had a great time. We were in and out. We were always traveling, you and I, and I just love the mindset of working with animals. You know, I love all animals. I love all, you know, living things. I just love life right now. But horses, you're absolutely right about the relationship, Mo. You know, they sense you. Colonel, you're absolutely right. And when you're dealing with a lot of Marines, and as you know, Colonel, we were bringing freshly wounded warriors to these
Yeah.
ranches, and they're carrying a lot of weight. And I know you've seen that weight, Mo. You've seen the battle scars of the burn veterans, right? And you've seen the shallow PTSD that's barely there, but it's hiding, but it's there, and the trust of the horse, also provides trust between you and that veteran as well. Because you're teaching that veteran to trust, right? And that horse, I've seen Marines get on horses, veterans get on horses, and the horse didn't want nothing to do with it because that Marine was carrying a heavy pack of emotions. The horse didn't want nothing to do with it, you know. But grooming that horse, just not just petting it, but grooming it and just spending time with it, walking it around. That's where the trust begins. And I can really appreciate what you two gentlemen have done and your organization. I'm a fan. And we got about 10 more minutes left of this episode, but before we go, I'm going to award Forged Valor $20,000 today. I'm going to send a award letter to both you and John. It's unrestricted because we're going to talk about what that means, restricted versus unrestricted. And this isn't going to be a one-time thing. This is going to be a relationship that we're going to build. All right. You lead and DVNF is going to support the mindset that you folks have on it's like that old story, you got this little boy walking along the shore of an ocean and there's thousands of starfish all over the place, and he's rushing to throw as many as he can back into the ocean to save it. All right. And then you have this older gentleman, right? He doesn't go towards the crowd of the starfish. He goes to the one that's further away from the water, right? And it's a longer journey for him because he's such older, and then he grabs that, finally gets that starfish, and he walks that long walk back to put him in the ocean. And I think that's what you're doing. You're not trying to bring the mass in. You're trying to take care of those singular veterans that are so far away, and you're trying to bring them back. And I can appreciate that. And I say this to you and your team, it's a pleasure just knowing the Colonel. It's a pleasure knowing you, Mo. I know what you're both about. I see the heart and desire, and I believe in you. And I have a wonderful board of directors that trust the fidelities and abilities of the Sergeant Major, and allow me to move the organization forward and build those relationships. So I thank them. I thank the even if donors, out there. I thank all the ones that are following us on Facebook. If a donor would love to donate to you, where would they go? Where would they go? What's your link? What's your website link?
Yeah. So, well, just forgedvalor.org is and you go to how to get involved, and it will have a donation. You can donate by Venmo or check or
All right,
a reoccurring donation is what we like to get started. But it's all on our website. We're easy to find. You'll find a marvelous picture of Mo on the cover page out there sorting cattle in, I think, New Mexico. Let me just say this, because this has touched my heart, and I think it's applicable. Is that Psalms 27:17 says, "Iron sharpens iron as one man sharpens another." When Mo came to the first Cutting Horse Classic, there were a lot of cutting horse trainers there. They all trained great during the week, during the day, and then they all went home at night. Mo stuck around, and he came to the fire and sat with the guys to the wee hours. And then he came back for the second one, sat by the fire, did the training, sat by the fire, talked to the guys. It's time devoted, just like um, how you make a difference in your family is by spending time, meaningful time with them, right? When veterans or young adults come to Forged Valor, they're getting Mo and they're getting me. That's it. We don't hire subcontractors. We don't have interns coming in or whatever. It's the two of us are on them all the time. Yeah. You know, after World War II, America said to their veterans, hey, you did a great job. But guess what? The Soviet Union is rising. You've got to get back to work. We need you now as much as we needed you to win over Germany and Japan. The war isn't over yet. And I think that's Mo's point, is that you can go to combat, you can go and fight in Iraq and Afghanistan, but the real battle is for the hearts and minds of your families, your communities, and we need you to lead again. Yeah? We need you to be engaged in life. This is combat, and you're a warrior if you choose to fight for what's right and save the lives of your loved ones, and so that they too enjoy the freedoms of this country. Yeah. Anyway,
Absolutely.
that's what Forged Valor is about. And if your watchers agree with, this is something worth giving money to, you can find us on our Facebook page. You'll see our main updates, but our website has how to donate to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you can describe your ranch to me, Mo, describe your ranch.
Well, I'm in North Carolina. I'm in the hills of North Carolina, like the Gateway, the Blue Ridge Parkway. It's quite beautiful here. Pretty views of the mountains. I'm right beside Hanging Rock State Park. So we have an outdoor pen. We have an indoor pen. We have there's about I don't have a ton of cattle because I don't have the land size that in Montana ranches. I have about 70 head here right now. And so there's a lot here to do. I have a full gym on my ranch. I'm in a good sized gym. I love to box and do martial arts, and then I have weights and all that stuff. And so people come here, they get that too. And then I have a leather room, and we have a lot of activities here on the ranch. And we have a apartment that people stay in when they come for events. So it's green. It's real pretty and green now. And when you think of this ranch, oh, it's beautiful, but it's a lot of work.
Absolutely.
It's a lot of work, and so to keep it up is a lot of work, a lot of financial work, and to keep all the horses up for the program is a lot of financial work. And neither John or I take any money from the organization. We believe in what we do. So, we both.
Well, and I'm glad you're talking about that as well, because I'm all right. I just said I was gonna give you $20,000. I'm gonna give you $25,000 award letter today, right? I'm gonna up it by another 5,000 because I understand that you can't put your horses on airplanes. So, and you're not jumping on their back and riding them to Wyoming and Montana and Colorado and so forth.
Diesel fuel is
You got a diesel fuel, and then with what's going on in the world, things are expensive and all that. So listen, this $25,000, and I'll have to change the narrative on that award letter I'm going to send out to you that I typed earlier. It's for $25,000 unsecured. I want you to utilize that to get the team right to where it needs to be to take care of those veterans. That's important. A lot of folks out there don't understand how nonprofits, you think that a nonprofit gets donated a dollar goes directly to the veteran. The services go directly to the veteran. If you want a dollar go directly to the veteran, go stand in a corner and give it to them, and they'll probably end up buying a bottle of salty Irish Rose to drink or whatever. That's the mindset there. But in a nonprofit world, there's restricted funds and unrestricted funds. This is unrestricted because it takes a lot of money to get your team to the fight.
It does.
Take care of those veterans. And the team is you got to take care of the team. You got to take care of the program. So that's what those funds are going to be utilized for. Utilize it to enforce, empower the team to get to the fight to serve those veterans in need, period. That's the way it works in a nonprofit world. The ones out there that don't understand how it works, they're just lost in the sauce. Believe it or not, a nonprofit is a business because you have to run it like a business. You just can't shoot from the hip on these things. If you're serving there's three important things of a nonprofit, right? The number one important thing is fundraising. That's the number one thing, is fundraise. Because without the donors out there, without that wonderful heart out there, that they're believing in you, they're trusting in you. So it's the donor that's number one, and I thank them. I thank them truly, honestly. And then when I have the funds, I got to make sure I can provide the services. Those are the programs. What programs are going to make the best impact on those disabled and at-risk veterans? And you're serving those as well. We all are. What program is actually going to serve, right? The machine, right? The funding, the machine to produce the thrust, right, of serving those veterans. So that's the way you got to think about your nonprofit, because that's the way I think about DVNF. I have the programs that we created at DVNF. That's www.dvnf.org. We have health and comfort programs. I took John through them. I didn't have the time to take you through them, but visit our website. We have a Veterans Food Assistance Program where we serve our veterans. We have food delivered right to their house, not canned food. These are meats, dairy, whatever they need. All right. Then we have grants provide stability, GPS, right? We want to keep the veteran in their house. We already knocked out the food insecurity, right? All right. Look at our economic landscape. It's out of control right now. We don't know what tomorrow is going to be. Food, all right? Let's keep them in a house. Grants provide stability. You can use these resources for your veterans. So when you have them around that campfire and they have insecurities, they can't feed their family, guess what? You get a hold of Joe at VVNF, right? And we'll get them through the VFAP program. I become a resource for Forged Valor, right? Grants provide stability. They're going to open up to you, riding that horse and relaxing. You know how it is. You're strolling along, and next you're breaking bread and you're talking about those demons. And a lot of those demons are due to the stress from the economic landscape. Grants provide stability. I can't pay my mortgage this month. These things came up. They can't make two ends meet. What do? I can't say I can solve all their problems. We're limited in terms of funds monthly as well, because I got to spread my budget out for 12 months. But we're a resource, right? And we got homeless to housing, right? We got veterans out there that are waiting to get into Section 8 or just waiting to get into an apartment. They've been falling by the wayside, right? What we do for homeless to housing, we buy them furniture. We help them get their bedding, their kitchen utensils, living room suite, whatever they need to feel as if that first apartment or that apartment that they lost and they got it back, they have something to sleep on. They have those things. Homeless to housing. And then we have our comfort kits. Hygiene. We want to keep the service member clean, veteran clean, feed them, keep them in a house, or hopefully get them in a house. Those are DVNF's health and comfort programs. Probably wonder where I got that from, right, Colonel? That's those health and comfort inspections that the sergeant major and colonel used to do, or leadership. That's what DVNF is. And then we have Mission Possible, right? With Dr. Marty Rosman. He's the host of Mission Possible. Mind, body, and spirit, right? We can go to the gym and we can work out on our arms, our thighs, and so forth, but we ever sit and talk about how do we work out on that, right? Why do we hold on to things that we can't control? Let's teach them how to weed their mental guard and so forth. And that's what you kind of do as well when you have that downtime with them after hard days of work. You help them weed that mental guard and focus on what's really good, what's real, their wife, their children, right? Those positive attributes. Right, you want to pull out those negatives, right? And then we have Operation Mission Possible podcast, OMP, right? Where we serve like-minded nonprofits like you wonderful gentlemen right here, right? Force multiplying, right? Because we believe on Operation Mission Possible that all life challenges can be managed. And I believe that. And I tell you what, I'm glad that I took the time find out where my good colonel was and reach out to him, because I knew that he'd be serving veterans in another capacity after he left the Marine Corps, and I was right. And to see Mo Smith as his partner in crime right there, and I remember meeting you when I learned to cut horses and all that, and I loved it. And I'll tell you what, I really respect the way you carried yourself and you held yourself firm, fair. You're a gentleman, and quite frankly, you're one of the envisions of a cowboy. every child wanted to be a cowboy. I was one of them, right? And I'll tell you what, I had that opportunity. And believe it or not, I believe I am a cowboy because I can ride a horse. I remember I was riding a horse in Casper, Wyoming, right by the colonel. Later, cut up and he goes, "Geez, you're a cowboy." I know you remember that, Colonel. I know you remember that.
I
Colonel.
remember. You did pretty well, I remember. So
And,
that's good.
I tell you
Yeah.
what, gentlemen, I really appreciate you two taking the time, having a conversation with Joe, learning about DVNF, and for DVNF to learn about, Forged Valor and the heart and desire that feeds it, and the fire. I see the fire in you too, and I'm excited to partner with you. And on behalf of our board of directors and all my donors out there and our viewers, and I know Montel Williams is probably watching this too. He's a good friend.
I'm good.
Absolutely. I'm sure he's excited. I bet you we can probably get him on a horse to be a cowboy. He'd probably be pretty good at
Or
it.
come by the fire at least.
Absolutely. And make sure you stay in contact with me after you receive our award letter, and you'll receive the week with the check within a week, $25,000 unrestricted. Please keep me posted. Show me some of the impact statements that you folks are doing. Invite me out there, because I'd love to get out there. Maybe do some team pinning or something like that with you.
When did you ride a horse last, Joe?
Last time I rode a horse when I was with you, Colonel Mayor. No, no. I was actually at a ranch way upstate New York, and with an organization, I had an opportunity to ride a horse, and I didn't have to wear a helmet either. So I didn't have my cowboy hat on, but I had a cover. But hey, riding a bike is like riding a horse. I would love to build a relationship with one of your horses and spend some time with you folks. So please invite me out. Maybe I'll bring one of my board of directors, and they can see how the West was won.
We'll send you down to Moe's to get some riding time.
Absolutely. You're right down the road from me there, Mo. We're up in, Lanham, Maryland. We moved out of Washington, D.C. So, listen, gentlemen, it's been a great episode. It's been an hour. I'm Joe VanFonda. This is Colonel Mayor, retired Colonel. This is Mo Smith, Forged Valor, co-founders, CEOs, and motivators. And I'm the host of Operation Mission Impossible. Stay motivated. I love you, brothers, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Go.
Thank you.